The arrogant alien scientists called humans barbaric and stupid, but they would soon eat those words when human ingenuity saved the galaxy. "This cannot be," Dr. Zalor shouted, slamming his fist on the podium. The Qualon scientist glared at Lurex, the young Zorgon researcher who dared present a revolutionary breakthrough to the Galactic Scientific Council. Lurex had discovered a way to create stable micro-wormholes with immense potential to transform space travel and communication, but the Council scoffed at the notion that a primitive race like the Zorgons could achieve such a feat. They dismissed Lurex's work and mocked his people as intellectually inferior. Lurex returned to his lab, determined to prove them wrong, but he had no idea that his discovery would soon become the key to humanity's survival and the last hope for the galaxy itself. As an unknown existential threat loomed on the horizon, the scientific community would need to put aside their prejudices and turn to the only ones clever and resourceful enough to turn Lurex's theoretical work into practical reality: the humans of Earth. The very fate of galactic civilization now rested on the barbaric humans, figuring out micro-wormhole technology before time ran out for them all. Lurex's lab was a mess of wires, circuits, and glowing displays. He had lost track of how many days he had spent hunched over his workbench, trying to perfect the micro-wormhole generator. Every test brought him closer to a stable wormhole, but there was always something missing. Some critical component that would prevent the wormhole from collapsing in on itself. He pored over the data from his latest experiment, searching for clues. And there it was, hidden in the subatomic fluctuations. The wormhole needed a massive amount of gravitational energy to stay open. And the only element dense enough to provide that kind of gravity was neutronium. Lurex checked the galactic database for neutronium sources. The element was incredibly rare, found only in the cores of dead stars. But there was one planet, Xerxes Prime, that had an unusually high concentration of neutronium in its crust. If he could just get his hands on a sample. Lurex submitted a formal request to the Galactic Scientific Council for an expedition to Xerxes Prime. He outlined the potential benefits of his research: faster-than-light communication, instantaneous travel between star systems. But he knew it was a long shot. The Council had already made their disdain for his work clear. A week later, Lurex stood before the Council, trying to keep his composure as Dr. Zalor tore into his proposal. "Absolutely not," Dr. Zalor said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Xerxes Prime is a death trap. The gravitational forces on that planet would crush any landing party." "But the potential benefits," Lurex started to say. "The benefits are theoretical at best," Dr. Zalor cut him off. "We will not risk lives and resources on a fool's errand." The other council members nodded in agreement. Lurex felt his heart sink. Without neutronium, his micro-wormhole technology would remain nothing more than a lab curiosity. As he left the council chambers, Lurex's mind raced. He couldn't give up now, not when he was so close. And then it hit him. The humans. They were known for their resourcefulness and their willingness to take risks. If anyone could help him get to Xerxes Prime, it would be them. Lurex pulled out his communicator and searched for the contact information of the nearest human ambassador. He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he was making a mistake. But then he thought of all the alien scientists who had mocked him and his people. He thought of the incredible potential of his discovery and how it could change the galaxy forever. He pressed the call button and waited for the ambassador to answer. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot he had left. Lurex's ship touched down on the outskirts of the sprawling human city. He stepped out onto the launch pad, his heart racing with excitement and trepidation. This was his first time on Earth, and he had no idea what to expect from the humans. Would they be willing to help him, or would they dismiss him as just another crazy alien scientist? He made his way to the address he had been given, a nondescript building on the edge of a university campus. The sign on the door read, "Dr. James Hawkins, Department of Theoretical Physics." Lurex took a deep breath and knocked. A moment later, The door opened to reveal a middle-aged human man with graying hair and piercing blue eyes. He looked Lurex up and down, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Hawkins?" Lurex asked, his voice shaking slightly. "My name is Lurex. I'm a scientist from the planet Zorgon. I've been studying micro-wormholes and I think I've made a breakthrough, but I need your help." Dr. Hawkins raised an eyebrow. "Micro-wormholes? I've been studying wormhole theory for decades, but I've never heard of anyone actually creating one. What makes you think you've succeeded where so many others have failed?" Lurex held out a datapad. "I have all my research here. I know it sounds impossible, but I've run countless simulations and experiments. I just need one more piece of the puzzle, a rare element called neutronium, and I think I know where to find it." Dr. Hawkins took the datapad and began scrolling through the files, his eyes widening as he read. "This is impressive," he said at last. "If your calculations are correct, this could change everything. Faster than light travel, instantaneous communication across the galaxy." He looked up at Lurex, his expression serious. "But neutronium is incredibly dangerous. It's only found in the cores of dead stars, and the gravitational forces involved are immense. How do you propose we get it?" Lurex took a deep breath. "There's a planet called Xerxes Prime that has unusually high concentrations of neutronium in its crust. If we could mount an expedition there, we might be able to extract a sample. But it won't be easy. The Galactic Council has already denied my request for funding and support." Dr. Hawkins nodded slowly. "I can see why they might be hesitant, but if this technology is as revolutionary as you say, we can't afford to let it slip away. We'll have to take matters into our own hands." Over the next few weeks, Lurex and Dr. Hawkins worked tirelessly to plan the expedition to Xerxes Prime. They recruited a team of experts from both Earth and Zorgon, including a skilled human pilot named Captain Jack Ryder and a tough Zorgon security officer named Krag. But as they prepared for the mission, they faced numerous challenges. Unknown parties seemed determined to sabotage their efforts, tampering with their equipment and leaking false information to the media. And the Galactic Council was putting increasing pressure on them to abandon the project, threatening to cut off all funding and support. Lurex and Dr. Hawkins refused to be intimidated. They knew that the stakes were too high to give up now. If they could just get their hands on that neutronium, they could unlock the secrets of the universe and change the course of galactic history. But as the launch date approached, Lurex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. One night, as he worked late in the lab, he heard a noise behind him. He turned to see a shadowy figure lurking in the doorway, a blaster pistol in their hand. "Step away from the computer," the figure said, their voice distorted by a mask. "This ends now." Lurex's heart pounded as the expedition ship broke through Xerxes Prime's atmosphere. Captain Ryder guided the craft towards the coordinates of the neutronium deposits with expert precision. But as they approached the landing site, Lurex noticed something strange on the scanners. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple life signs and energy signatures on the surface," Lurex said, his brow furrowed in confusion. "This planet is supposed to be uninhabited." Ryder leaned over to check the readings. "You're right, and those energy signatures, and they look like some kind of advanced technology. Weapons, maybe?" Before Lurex could respond, a blast of energy rocked the ship, sending them lurching to the side. Alarms blared as Ryder struggled to regain control. "We're under attack," Krag shouted from the back of the cockpit. "Multiple hostiles incoming." Lurex's mind raced. Who could be attacking them, and why? He pulled up the scanner data and gasped. The attackers were using weapons powered by neutronium. "Evasive maneuvers," Ryder yelled, banking the ship hard to the right. "Krag, get on the guns and return fire." The ship shuddered as more blasts hit the shields. Lurex held on tight, his stomach churning with fear and adrenaline. He caught a glimpse of their attackers through the viewscreen, sleek black ships with strange angular designs. "I've never seen ships like that before," Dr. Hawkins said, his voice tense. "Who are they?" "Whoever they are, they really don't want us here," Ryder grunted. swerving to avoid another barrage of fire. Lurex's mind was racing. If these mysterious attackers had neutronium weapons, that meant they had been mining the element for some time. But why? And how had they kept their presence on Xerxes Prime a secret from the rest of the galaxy? The ship shuddered again, sparks flying from the control panels. "Shields are down to 20%, Ryder shouted. "We can't take much more of this." Lurex made a split-second decision. "We have to land now. If we can get to the surface, we might be able to find cover and regroup." Ryder nodded grimly. "Hold on tight, everyone. This is going to be a rough landing." The ship plummeted towards the surface, enemy fire still raining down on them. At the last second, Ryder pulled up, skimming the ground and throwing up a cloud of dust and debris. The ship skidded to a halt, smoke pouring from the engines. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Cragg's voice crackled over the intercom. "Is everyone all right?" Lurex checked on Dr. Hawkins, who was shaken but unharmed. "We're okay," he said, "but we need to get out of here before those ships come back." They grabbed their gear and stumbled out of the ship onto the rocky, barren surface of Xerxes Prime. In the distance, Lurex could see strange, towering structures that looked like mining equipment, and in the sky above, the enemy ships were circling like vultures. "Look!" Dr. Hawkins shouted, pointing towards a group of figures approaching them. They were tall and muscular, with scaly green skin and glowing red eyes. They carried neutronium weapons and wore armor that shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light. "Kroloks," Cragg growled, raising his blaster. "I've heard stories about them. They're a violent, warlike race. They must be the ones mining the neutronium." The Kroloks opened fire, their weapons tearing through the air with a sickening hum. Lurex and the others dove for cover behind a nearby outcropping of rocks. "We're outgunned," Ryder shouted over the din of battle. "We need to fall back and regroup." But before they could make a move, a group of Kroloks warriors surrounded them, their weapons trained on the expedition team. One of them stepped forward, a cruel smile on his scaly face. "Well, well, well," he said in a guttural voice. "What do we have here? A bunch of trespassers come to steal our neutronium?" Lurex stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We didn't come here to steal anything," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're scientists, here to study the neutronium deposits. We had no idea anyone else was here." The Kroloks leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Scientists? Don't make me laugh. You're spies sent by the Galactic Council to sabotage our operation. But you're too late. Soon, we will have enough neutronium to build an arsenal that will make us unstoppable. And the galaxy will tremble before the might of the Kroloks." Dr. Hawkins stepped forward, looking indignant. "The Council had nothing to do with this. We came here on our own." He was cut off by a blast from the Kroloks' leader's weapon. Dr. Hawkins crumpled to the ground, unconscious. "Hawkins!" Ryder shouted, raising his own blaster. But the Kroloks were too fast. They disarmed the humans and Zorgons with brutal efficiency. "Take them to the base," the leader snarled. "Grax will want to interrogate them personally." As the expedition team was marched away at gunpoint, Lurex caught a glimpse of the Kroloks' leader, picking up Dr. Hawkins and slinging him over his shoulder like a sack of cargo. Fear and anger surged through him. He had to find a way to rescue his friend and stop the Kroloks before it was too late. But how could they fight against an enemy with such advanced weaponry? The Kroloks' base was a labyrinth of dark, twisting corridors, lit by an eerie greenish glow. Lurex and the others were roughly shoved into a cramped holding cell, their hands bound behind their backs. Dr. Hawkins was nowhere to be seen. "We have to get out of here," Ryder muttered, straining against his bonds. "Hawkins is in trouble, and if the Kroloks are planning to attack the Council worlds, we have to warn them." Lurex nodded, his mind racing. He scanned the cell, looking for any weakness they could exploit. His eyes fell on a small ventilation shaft in the corner, just big enough for a person to crawl through. "I have an idea," he said, keeping his voice low. "Cragg, do you think you could fit through that shaft?" The Zorgon security officer eyed the opening, then nodded. "It'll be a tight squeeze, but I think I can manage it." Good. Once you're out, try to find the armory and grab some weapons, then see if you can locate Dr. Hawkins. Ryder and I will create a distraction to buy you some time. Crag set to work, using his claws to pry open the grate covering the ventilation shaft. In a matter of moments, he had wriggled his way inside and disappeared from view. Lurex and Ryder exchanged a glance, then began shouting and banging on the cell door, trying to attract the attention of the guards. It didn't take long for a group of Kroloks to come running, their weapons at the ready. "What's all this noise?" one of them growled, glaring at the prisoners. "We demand to speak to your leader," Ryder said, putting on his best indignant expression. "This is an outrage. We're peaceful explorers, not spies." The Kroloks just laughed. "Peaceful explorers, eh? Then why did you come here armed to the teeth? You'll have plenty of time to talk to Grax, if he doesn't just kill you outright." Just then there was a commotion from down the corridor. The guards turned to see Crag barreling towards them, a stolen neutronium blaster in each hand. He fired off a volley of shots, taking down 2 of the Kroloks before they could react. Ryder sprang into action, tackling the remaining guard and wrestling his weapon away from him. Lurex scooped up a fallen blaster and used it to shoot through their restraints. "Let's go," Crag shouted, tossing them each a weapon. "I found the armory, and I think I know where they're holding Dr. Hawkins." They raced through the corridors, following Krag's lead. Alarms blared and Krolok's warriors shouted in the distance, but they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to, not with Dr. Hawkins' life on the line. Finally, they reached a heavily guarded door. Lurex could hear a voice from inside, raised in anger. It was the Krolok's leader, Grax. "Tell me the secrets of the micro-wormhole technology," he roared, "or I will rip them from your mind piece by piece." Lurex and the others exchanged a grim look. They knew they had to act fast. Ryder and Crag took up positions on either side of the door, while Lurex stood ready to charge inside. "On 3, Ryder whispered. 1, 2, 3. They burst through the door, weapons blazing. The Krolok's guards inside were taken completely by surprise. Lurex saw Dr. Hawkins strapped to a metal table, his face bruised and bloodied. Grax stood over him, a cruel-looking device in his hand. "Step away from him," Lurex shouted, leveling his blaster at the warlord's head. Grax snarled in rage and lunged for his own weapon, but Ryder was faster. He fired off a shot that hit Grax square in the chest, sending him flying backwards into the wall. Crag rushed to Dr. Hawkins's side and began freeing him from his restraints. "Are you all right, Doctor?" he asked. Dr. Hawkins nodded weakly, his eyes glazed with pain. "I'll live, thanks to you." As they helped him to his feet, Lurex noticed a computer terminal in the corner of the room. It was still logged in, displaying schematics and plans. He hurried over to take a closer look. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Kroloks weren't just planning to attack the Council worlds, they were going to use the micro-wormhole technology to do it. With neutronium-powered weapons and the ability to strike anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously, they would be unstoppable. "We have to get this information back to the Council," Lurex said, downloading the files onto a data chip. "If the Kroloks succeed, it could mean the end of galactic civilization as we know it." The escape from Xerxes Prime was a blur of adrenaline and desperation. Lurex clutched the precious neutronium sample close to his chest as they raced through the winding corridors of the Krolok's base, dodging blaster fire and shouting orders to each other over the chaos. "Ryder, take point," Crag barked, firing off a volley of shots at the Krolok's warriors pursuing them. "Hawkins, stay close to Lurex. We can't lose that sample." They burst out into the harsh sunlight of the planet's surface, sprinting towards their waiting ship. The Kroloks were hot on their heels, their weapons leaving scorch marks on the rocky ground around them. Lurex's lungs burned as he ran, but he didn't dare slow down. He could hear Dr. Hawkins panting beside him, the human scientist's face twisted with pain and exhaustion. At last they reached the ship. Ryder was already in the pilot's seat, the engines humming to life. Lurex and Dr. Hawkins scrambled aboard, Crag bringing up the rear with a final burst of covering fire. "Punch it!" Lurex yelled, and Ryder obliged, sending the ship rocketing into the sky. As they broke through the atmosphere, Lurex slumped back in his seat, his heart pounding. He looked down at the neutronium sample in his hands, hardly daring to believe that they had actually succeeded. "We did it," Dr. Hawkins said, his voice hoarse. "We got the neutronium." Lurex nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Now comes the hard part. We have to convince the Council of the truth." They made the journey back to the Council headquarters in record time, pushing the ship's engines to their limits. Lurex barely slept, his mind racing with the implications of what they had discovered. When they finally arrived, they were met with a scene of chaos. Council members were shouting and arguing, their faces tight with fear and confusion. Lurex and Dr. Hawkins pushed their way through the crowd, the neutronium sample held high. "We have evidence of a Krolok's plot to invade and conquer the Council worlds," Lurex shouted, his voice cutting through the din. "We must act now before it's too late." But as he laid out their findings, he was met with a wall of skepticism and disbelief. Dr. Zaylor, his old nemesis, was the loudest voice of opposition. "This is preposterous," Zaylor sneered. "The Krolok's are a primitive race barely capable of spaceflight, and you expect us to believe that they have amassed an army powerful enough to threaten the entire galaxy?" Lurex opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, Captain Ryder stepped forward. In his hand he held a small recording device. "I think you'll want to hear this, Dr. Zaylor," he said, his voice cold. He pressed a button, and the room fell silent as a crackling recording began to play. It was a conversation between Zaylor and Grax, the Krolok's leader. They were discussing a deal, advanced technology in exchange for neutronium. As the recording ended, the Council erupted into chaos once again. Zaylor's face had gone pale, his eyes wide with shock and fear. "This is a fabrication," he spluttered. "A trick!" But it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council voted to strip Zaylor of his position and honors, and to begin preparations for a possible Krolok's invasion. In the days that followed, Lurex and Dr. Hawkins worked tirelessly to refine their micro-wormhole technology. Using the neutronium sample, they were able to create a stable wormhole, large enough to transport an entire fleet of ships. "If we can lure the Krolok's into the wormhole," Lurex explained to the Council, "we can transport them directly into a black hole. Their entire fleet will be destroyed in an instant." It was a risky plan, but it was the only chance they had. The Council gave their approval, and the preparations began. When the day of the Krolok's invasion finally came, Lurex and Dr. Hawkins were ready. They watched from the bridge of the Council's flagship as the Krolok's fleet emerged from hyperspace, their ships bristling with neutronium-powered weapons. But before the Krolok's could fire a single shot, Lurex activated the micro-wormhole generator. A massive, swirling vortex appeared in the center of the Krolok's formation, its gravitational pull irresistible. The Krolok's ships struggled to escape, but it was no use. One by one they were sucked into the wormhole, disappearing into the black hole beyond. In a matter of moments, the entire Krolok's fleet was gone. The threat had been neutralized. Lurex and Dr. Hawkins watched in stunned silence as the Council members erupted into cheers and applause. They had done it. They had saved the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, Lurex and Dr. Hawkins were hailed as heroes. Their micro-wormhole technology was recognized as a major breakthrough, with countless potential applications in science and exploration. But for Lurex, the greatest reward was the newfound respect and cooperation between his people and the humans. He knew that their partnership had been the key to their success, and he looked forward to a future of continued collaboration and discovery. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.